I sat at my kitchen table, pen trembling in my hand, as I stared at the guest list for my wedding. 49 names were written down in careful script, but the 50th slot remained empty. Marcus Andrew Thompson, my golden child brother. The one who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes, even when he was destroying everything around him. For 29 years, I had lived in his shadow, making excuses for his behavior, cleaning up his messes. But this was my day, my wedding. And for the first time in my life, I was going to choose my own happiness over keeping the peace. Before I share what happened next, let me know in the comments where you are watching from, and please hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this. Trust me, you will want to stick around for what my parents did when they found out about my decision. Growing up in suburban Ohio, I thought every family was like mine. My father, Robert, worked as an accountant at a local firm, coming home each evening with his tie loosened and briefcase in hand. My mother, Patricia, spent her days as a nurse at the county hospital, always talking about how she helped people heal. They seemed like the perfect middle-class American parents, the kind you would see in television commercials selling breakfast cereal or life insurance. But behind closed doors, our family had an unspoken hierarchy. At the top sat Marcus, 3 years younger than me, but somehow always the center of attention. When I brought home straight A report cards, my parents would glance at them briefly before asking about Marcus's baseball practice. When I won the state science fair in 10th grade, the celebration dinner got canceled because Marcus had failed his driving test and needed emotional support. When I received a full scholarship to design school, my parents spent the entire dinner discussing whether Marcus should repeat his senior year or transfer to a different high school. I learned early that my achievements were expected while Marcus's mediocrity was celebrated. If I scored 98% on a test, my parents would ask about the missing 2%. If Marcus managed to pass with a 70%, they would take him out for ice cream to celebrate his improvement. The message was clear: I was supposed to be perfect, and Marcus was supposed to be forgiven. The pattern continued through our teenage years. When Marcus started drinking at 16, stealing bottles from our parents' liquor cabinet, and coming home stumbling drunk, my parents called it experimental behavior. When I stayed out 15 minutes past curfew because my debate team meeting ran long, I was grounded for 2 weeks. Marcus crashed his car 3 times before graduation, each time while under the influence, and each time my parents found a way to blame external circumstances. The insurance payments, the lawyer fees, the court appearances. None of it was ever Marcus's fault. But the incident that broke something inside me happened during my parents' anniversary dinner last year. I had been working 16-hour days, building my small graphic design business, finally seeing some success after 2 years of struggle. Marcus had been unemployed for 8 months, living in their basement and spending his days playing video games. 3 months earlier, he had borrowed $5,000 from me, promising to pay it back when he found work. I never saw a penny of it. For their 32nd anniversary, I had saved up to buy my parents a beautiful crystal vase, something elegant they could display in their dining room. I wrapped it carefully and arrived early to help with dinner preparations. Marcus showed up 2 hours late, already drunk with a gas station bouquet he had clearly grabbed as an afterthought. During dinner, as I presented my gift and watched my parents admire the craftsmanship, Marcus became increasingly agitated. He started making loud comments about how some people had money to waste on fancy presents, while others were struggling to find jobs. When my aunt complimented the vase, Marcus stood up, abruptly swaying on his feet. "Yeah, well, some of us cannot all be perfect little princesses who think we are better than everyone else," he slurred, pointing at me across the table. Maybe if Miss Perfect here actually cared about family, instead of showing off her money, she would help her brother, instead of buying useless junk. Before I could respond, he grabbed the vase from the table. In his drunken state, it slipped from his hands and shattered against the dining room floor. 25 relatives watched in stunned silence as hundreds of dollars worth of crystal scattered across my parents' hardwood floors. I knelt down immediately, trying to gather the larger pieces while fighting back tears. This gift represented weeks of overtime work, careful saving, and genuine love for my parents. Now it was destroyed. And worse, I could see the disappointment in my mother's eyes. Not at Marcus, but at the situation I had somehow created. "Marcus, just calm down," my father said quietly. But there was no anger in his voice, only tired resignation. Marcus was not finished. As I crouched on the floor cleaning up his mess, he launched into a verbal attack that left me breathless. He called me selfish, pretentious, and cold. He said I had always thought I was better than the family with my college education and my fancy business. He accused me of rubbing my success in his face and claimed I enjoyed watching him struggle. Every word felt like a physical blow. Here I was, cleaning up the remains of a gift I could barely afford while my brother berated me in front of our entire extended family. And my parents. They sat in silence, watching it happen. When Marcus finally stormed out, slamming the front door behind him, I expected some acknowledgement of what had just occurred. Instead, my mother turned to me with exhausted eyes and said, "Adela, you know how Marcus gets when he is struggling. Maybe next time, do not bring such expensive gifts. It makes him feel bad about himself." That night, I drove home in tears, something fundamental shifting inside my chest. For 28 years, I had been the responsible one, the peacekeeper, the daughter who never caused problems. And what did I have to show for it? A family who expected me to minimize myself so their golden child could feel better about his failures. 8 months later, everything changed when I met David at a small business networking event in downtown Columbus. He was a software engineer who had started his own consulting company, and when we struck up a conversation about the challenges of entrepreneurship, I felt understood in a way I had never experienced before. David listened when I talked about my design work, asked thoughtful questions about my goals, and never once made me feel like my ambitions were too much or too little. We started dating slowly, carefully. David had grown up in a stable, supportive family where achievements were celebrated and failures were met with encouragement rather than shame. Watching him interact with his parents and younger sister showed me what healthy family dynamics could look like. There was teasing and disagreement, but underneath it all was a foundation of genuine respect and affection. 6 months into our relationship, during a weekend trip to Colorado, David proposed on a hiking trail overlooking the Rocky Mountains. As I said yes, through happy tears, my first thought was not about wedding planning or dress shopping. It was about whether my family would find a way to make this moment about Marcus too. When I called my parents to share the news, their response confirmed my worst fears. After brief congratulations, my mother immediately asked, "So Marcus will be the best man, right? Or maybe you could have both David's brother and Marcus stand up there together." My father chimed in with suggestions about bachelor party planning, assuming Marcus would be involved in every aspect of the celebration. They talked about the wedding as though it were a family reunion where Marcus would play the starring role rather than a celebration of David and my commitment to each other. Not once did they ask about David's family, our future plans, or how I felt about this major life step. The conversation lasted 15 minutes, and 13 of those minutes were spent discussing Marcus's role in our wedding. When I finally hung up, David found me crying in our hotel room, and for the first time, I told him everything about growing up as the invisible child in a family where love was conditional and attention was currency. Planning a wedding should have been the happiest time of my life, but instead, it became a source of constant anxiety. David and I decided on a small ceremony with 50 guests at a beautiful garden venue outside the city. We wanted something intimate and meaningful, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about our happiness. As I worked on the guest list, I found myself staring at Marcus's name for hours at a time. David would find me at the kitchen table pen, hovering over the paper, unable to write anything down. The thought of Marcus at my wedding filled me with dread. I could picture him showing up, drunk, making a scene, saying something cruel during the reception speeches. I imagined my parents spending the entire day managing his behavior instead of celebrating with me. But it was more than just fear of disruption. I realized I genuinely did not want him there. This was supposed to be the most important day of my life, and I wanted to be surrounded by love, not by someone who had spent 3 decades making me feel small and worthless. The decision crystallized one evening when I was telling David about my 16th birthday party. My parents had thrown a small celebration in our backyard, and I had invited a few close friends from school. I was so excited because I had been dating a sweet boy named Jason for 3 months, and it was the first time he was meeting my extended family. Marcus, then 13, and already showing signs of his drinking problem, had snuck beer from the garage refrigerator. By the time the party was in full swing, he was drunk and belligerent. When he saw me dancing with Jason, something in him snapped. He marched over and started a fight, claiming Jason had disrespected me somehow. Before anyone could intervene, Marcus had punched Jason in the face, giving him a black eye and bloody nose. The party ended immediately. Jason's parents came to pick him up, furious about their son's injury. My friends left early, whispering among themselves about my crazy family. And my parents' response, they grounded me from dating until I graduated high school, saying I was too young to handle the responsibilities that came with having a boyfriend. Marcus faced no consequences. The incident was explained away as protective big brother behavior, even though he was younger than me and clearly acting out of jealousy rather than concern. I spent the rest of high school watching other girls go to dances and have normal teenage relationships, while I was banned from dating because of my brother's violence. As I finished telling David this story, I saw his jaw clench with anger. "He ruined your birthday, and you got punished for it," David asked quietly. "That is just how things worked in my family," I replied. Marcus acted out, and I dealt with the consequences. David took my hands and looked directly into my eyes. "This is our wedding day, Adela. You deserve to feel safe and celebrated, not anxious about what someone might do to hurt you. If you do not want Marcus there, then he does not get to be there." That night, I crossed Marcus's name off the guest list with firm, decisive strokes. For the first time in my life, I was choosing my own peace of mind over keeping my family happy. But I knew I had to tell my parents about the decision, and I dreaded that conversation more than anything I had ever faced before. I rehearsed what I would say for days, trying to find words that would help them understand without starting World War III. I planned to call on a Sunday evening when they would both be home and hopefully in good moods after their weekly dinner at the local diner. When I finally dialed their number, my heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My mother answered on the third ring, and after a few minutes of small talk about wedding planning, I took a deep breath and delivered the news. "Mom, I need to tell you something about the wedding. David and I have decided to keep the guest list small, and Marcus is not going to be invited." The silence that followed lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Then my mother exploded. "Adela Marie Thompson, you cannot be serious right now. He is your brother? Your only brother? How can you even think about getting married without your own family there?" I tried to stay calm, explaining that I wanted a peaceful celebration and that Marcus's drinking had caused problems at family events in the past. But my mother was not interested in hearing explanations. "You are being completely selfish and vindictive," she yelled into the phone. "Marcus has been trying so hard lately, and you are just throwing it back in his face. This is the most important family event in years, and you want to exclude your own flesh and blood." When my father got on the line, his voice was ice cold in a way I had never heard before. "If Marcus is not welcome at your wedding, then your mother and I will not be attending either. You can choose your brother or you can choose to destroy this family, but you cannot have both." The ultimatum hit me like a physical slap. I tried to reason with them to explain my perspective, but they had already made up their minds. This was not about understanding my feelings or supporting my decision as an adult. This was about maintaining the family dynamic where Marcus's comfort mattered more than everyone else's well-being. After they hung up on me, I sat in stunned silence for almost an hour. David came home from work to find me crying on the couch, and when I told him what had happened, I saw a flash of anger cross his face. that I had never seen before. So they would rather miss their daughter's wedding than ask their son to take responsibility for his behavior, he said. What kind of parents do that? The next few weeks were a special kind of hell. Word of the family drama spread quickly through our extended family network, and suddenly, everyone had opinions about my decision. My Aunt Sarah called to tell me I was breaking my mother's heart. My Uncle Michael left voicemails explaining how Marcus was really trying to turn his life around and deserved another chance. Cousins I barely spoke to sent text messages about the importance of family forgiveness. But the worst part was the silence from my parents. They did not return my calls or respond to my messages. When I drove by their house, their cars were in the driveway, but they did not answer the door. It was like I had ceased to exist in their world, and the pain of that rejection was almost unbearable. I started losing weight from stress, lying awake at night, wondering if I was making the biggest mistake of my life. David was incredibly supportive, but I could see him struggling too. This was supposed to be a happy time for us, and instead, we were dealing with family warfare over what should have been a simple guest list decision. 2 weeks before the wedding, Marcus himself called me. I almost did not answer, but something made me pick up the phone. "What the hell is wrong with you?" were the first words out of his mouth. "Mom is crying every day because of your selfishness. Dad is not speaking to anyone. You are tearing this family apart because you want to play the victim." He went on for 10 minutes calling me petty and cruel, saying I had always been jealous of the attention he got from our parents. He accused me of using my wedding as a weapon to hurt the family and claimed I was being dramatic about incidents that happened years ago. "Everyone makes mistakes when they are young," he said, "but you just hold on to grudges forever because it makes you feel special to be the martyr." When he finally stopped talking, I found my voice. "Marcus, you borrowed $5,000 from me 8 months ago and never paid it back. You destroyed my anniversary gift to our parents 3 months ago and then verbally attacked me in front of the entire family. This is not about old grudges. This is about protecting myself from someone who continues to hurt me." He hung up without another word. The morning of my wedding dawned clear and beautiful, with September sunshine filtering through the trees at our garden venue. I had spent the previous night at David's sister's house, following the tradition of not seeing the groom before the ceremony. Despite everything that had happened with my family, I woke up feeling hopeful and excited. This was my day, and I was marrying the most wonderful man I had ever known. My 2 bridesmaids, Sarah and Jamie, had been my closest friends since college, and they knew everything about the family situation. They helped me get ready with gentle encouragement and terrible jokes, doing everything they could to keep my spirits up. When I put on my wedding dress, a simple but elegant design I had chosen and altered myself, I finally felt like a bride rather than a stressed-out daughter trying to manage family politics. The ceremony was scheduled for 4 o'clock in the afternoon at Rosewood Gardens, a small venue with beautiful landscaping and an intimate gazebo where David and I would exchange vows. 45 guests had confirmed their attendance, including David's family, our closest friends, and a few relatives from my side who had chosen to support us despite my parents' boycott. By 3:30, most of our guests had arrived and were seated in the white folding chairs, arranged on either side of a petal-scattered aisle. David looked incredibly handsome in his navy blue suit, and when he saw me walking toward the garden entrance, his face lit up with such pure joy that I felt my own worries melting away. We were just about to begin the processional music when I heard shouting from the parking area. My stomach dropped as I recognized the voices immediately. Marcus, followed by both of my parents, was pushing past the venue coordinator and heading straight for our ceremony area. Marcus was clearly drunk, stumbling slightly as he walked and gesturing wildly with his hands. He was wearing wrinkled khakis and a polo shirt that looked like he had slept in it, completely inappropriate for a wedding even if he had been invited. Behind him, my parents looked grim and determined, dressed in their church clothes but wearing expressions of cold anger. What kind of wedding does not include the bride's own brother? Marcus shouted loud enough for all of our guests to hear. "This is insane. I am family. You cannot just pretend I do not exist." The 45 people we had carefully chosen to celebrate with us turned in their seats, faces showing confusion and alarm. David immediately moved to intercede, stepping between Marcus and me, with his hands raised peacefully. "Marcus, this is a private ceremony," David said firmly but calmly. "We need you to respect our wishes and leave." But Marcus was not in a mood to be reasonable. "You do not get to tell me anything about my sister's wedding, buddy. This is between family, and you are just the guy she is marrying." My father stepped forward, then his face set in hard lines I remembered from my childhood when he was about to deliver punishment. "Adela, this nonsense has gone on long enough. Marcus is your brother, and he belongs here whether you like it or not. We are all staying for this wedding." For a moment, I was 12 years old, again being told I was wrong for having feelings about Marcus's behavior. I felt that familiar urge to apologize, to give in, to do whatever it took to make the conflict stop. This was exactly what I had feared would happen, and part of me wanted to just let them stay so we could get through the ceremony without more drama. But then I looked at David standing protectively beside me, and at our friends and his family members who had come to celebrate our love. I thought about all the times I had backed down, all the moments I had swallowed my own needs to keep peace with people who never offered me the same consideration. And for the first time in my life, I decided I was done. "No," I said loud enough for everyone to hear. "You do not get to show up uninvited and make demands. You do not get to ruin my wedding because you cannot accept that actions have consequences." Marcus laughed harshly. "Oh, here we go. Poor little Adela, always the victim. What consequences? What did I ever do that was so terrible?" The question hung in the air, and I realized this was my moment. Not just to defend my decision, but to tell the truth I had been hiding for almost 3 decades. "You want to know what you did, Marcus?" I said, my voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through my veins. "When I was 10 years old, you held my puppy over the second-floor stair railing and threatened to drop him if I told Mom and Dad about you stealing money from their dresser drawer. When I was 14, you punched holes in my bedroom wall because I would not let you copy my homework. When I was 16, you started a fight with my boyfriend at my birthday party and got him banned from our house, which led to our parents forbidding me from dating until I graduated." I could see guests leaning forward in their seats, some nodding as they remembered stories I had told them over the years. My college friends had heard about my difficult family situation, though I had never shared the full extent of Marcus's behavior. "Last year, at Mom and Dad's anniversary dinner, you showed up drunk, destroyed a gift that cost me weeks of savings, and then spent 20 minutes calling me selfish and pretentious in front of our entire extended family. And through all of this, through 30 years of your drinking and violence and cruelty, our parents never once asked you to take responsibility or make amends. They just expected me to forgive and forget and pretend it never happened." Marcus tried to interrupt, but I was not finished. 3 decades of suppressed anger and hurt were pouring out of me, and I could not stop now. 8 months ago, you borrowed $5,000 from me and never paid it back. 3 months ago, you verbally attacked me at a family dinner and called me names in front of people I love. And now, you have shown up drunk at my wedding, uninvited, demanding to be included in a celebration you have done nothing to deserve. My mother stepped forward, then her face flushed with embarrassment and anger. "Adela, stop this right now. You are making a scene and embarrassing the whole family. Marcus was just young and made some mistakes. That does not give you the right to hold grudges forever." Mistakes. I repeated, feeling a kind of clarity I had never experienced before. "Mom, this is not about mistakes. This is about 30 years of watching you and Dad enable someone who has never faced a single consequence for hurting other people. This is about growing up in a family where I was expected to be perfect, while Marcus was forgiven for everything." I turned to address our wedding guests, directly knowing this was probably the last time I would ever have the chance to tell this story to people who mattered to me. When I was 18 and got a full scholarship to design school, the celebration dinner was canceled because Marcus failed his driving test and needed emotional support. When I started my business 2 years ago, the first family gathering I attended, Marcus spent the entire time complaining about how my success made him feel bad about himself. And when I got engaged to David, the first thing my parents asked was whether Marcus would be in the wedding party. Mrs. Henderson, our elderly next-door neighbor from my childhood, stood up in the back row. "I remember that little girl," she said in her wavering but clear voice. "I used to see her crying on the front porch after her brother would knock her off her bicycle or break her toys. Sweet child, always trying to take care of everyone else." Her words hit me like a physical embrace validation from someone who had witnessed my childhood from the outside. Other guests began nodding, and I realized that the people who truly knew me had always understood what kind of family I came from. Marcus was getting more agitated by the minute swaying on his feet and gesturing wildly. "This is all lies and exaggeration. I was just a normal kid. She is making me sound like some kind of monster because she cannot handle not being the center of attention." But his protests were starting to sound hollow even to my parents. I could see doubt creeping into their faces as they looked around at 45 people who clearly believed my version of the events over his. David stepped closer to me, taking my hand in a gesture of solidarity that gave me strength to continue. "The truth is, Marcus, you have been cruel to me for as long as I can remember, and Mom and Dad have spent 30 years making excuses for you. I am not doing that anymore. I am not going to pretend we have a healthy family relationship just because we share DNA. And I am certainly not going to let you ruin the most important day of my life." What happened next was something I never could have predicted. Marcus, faced with a room full of people who had just heard detailed accounts of his behavior, did not back down or apologize. Instead, he doubled down on his anger and entitlement. "You know what? Fine," he shouted, pointing an unsteady finger at me. "You want to cut me out of your life? Go ahead, but do not come crying to me when your perfect little marriage falls apart and you realize you threw away your real family for some guy you barely know." The insult to David was the final straw. My new husband stepped forward, his usual calm demeanor replaced by protective fury. "I think you need to leave now," David said, his voice quiet, but carrying the kind of authority that made Marcus take a step backward. "You have disrupted our ceremony, disrespected our guests, and spent the last 15 minutes verbally attacking my wife. Security is on the way, and you can either walk out with dignity or be escorted out. Your choice." I had not even noticed David signaling to the venue coordinator, but I could see 2 security guards approaching from the main building. Marcus looked around wildly, perhaps finally realizing that he had badly miscalculated the situation. My father tried one last time to assert control. "Adela, if you let them remove your brother from your wedding, do not expect your mother and me to ever speak to you again. This is your last chance to do the right thing." The ultimatum that might have terrified me 6 months ago now sounded like exactly the freedom I needed. I looked at my father, this man who had taught me to be responsible and hardworking, but never how to value myself, and felt a strange sense of peace wash over me. "Dad, I love you, and Mom, but I cannot keep sacrificing my happiness to maintain relationships that hurt me. If choosing to protect myself on my wedding day means you never want to speak to me again, then that tells me everything I need to know about what I mean to this family." My mother started crying, then big dramatic sobs that I recognized from childhood as her way of making everyone feel guilty when things did not go her way. "How can you say such horrible things about your own family? We love you, Adela. We have always loved you." "Love is not supposed to hurt this much, Mom," I replied, feeling tears starting in my own eyes, but for entirely different reasons. "Love is not supposed to require me to accept abuse to prove my loyalty. Love is not supposed to make me feel like I am never good enough unless I am making myself smaller, so someone else can feel bigger." The security guards reached us then politely but firmly, asking Marcus and my parents to leave the premises. Marcus started to argue, but his words were slurred, and his balance was getting worse. It was clear that trying to fight security while intoxicated was not going to end well for him. As they walked toward the parking lot, my mother turned back one more time. "You will regret this for the rest of your life, Adela. Family is all you have in the end, and you are throwing it away for pride." I watched them go, feeling a complex mixture of sadness, relief, and something that might have been grief. This was not how I had imagined my wedding day, but it was also not the first time my family had tried to make my important moments about their drama. David squeezed my hand and looked into my eyes. "Are you okay? Do you need a few minutes before we continue?" I looked around at our guests, these people who had just witnessed the most painful family confrontation of my life, and saw nothing but love and support in their faces. David's parents looked concerned, but not judgmental. My college friends were nodding encouragingly. Even Mrs. Henderson gave me a little thumbs up from her seat in the back row. "Actually," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded, "I think I am ready to get married now." The ceremony that followed was more beautiful than I could have imagined. Without the specter of family drama hanging over us, I was able to focus completely on David and the vows we were making to each other. When he promised to support my dreams and defend my happiness, I knew he was not just speaking in generalities. When I promised to build a life based on mutual respect and genuine partnership, I meant every word. Our first dance was to "At Last" by Etta James. And as David held me close and whispered how proud he was of my strength, I finally understood what it felt like to be truly protected and valued by someone who loved me. The reception continued into the evening with dancing heartfelt toasts from David's best man and my bridesmaids, and the kind of pure joy that comes from being surrounded by people who want nothing more than your happiness. Several guests approached me throughout the night to share their own stories about difficult family relationships and to tell me how brave they thought I had been. David's father pulled me aside during the cake cutting and said something I will never forget. "Adela, I want you to know that David's mother and I consider ourselves lucky to have you as a daughter. Any family that would treat you the way yours did today does not deserve you." It was the first time anyone had ever suggested that my family was the problem rather than me. And hearing it from a man I respected so much made me feel validated in a way I had never experienced before. 6 months after our wedding, I received a text message from Marcus. It was sent at 2 a.m. and consisted of a rambling apology that mentioned his drinking problem and claimed he was getting help. But even in his apology, he managed to blame me for making him feel bad about himself, and suggested that my high standards had contributed to his problems. I showed the message to David and to the therapist I had started seeing to work through the childhood trauma I was finally ready to address. Both of them pointed out that a real apology focuses on the harm done to the other person, not on explaining why the harmful behavior happened or shifting blame back to the victim. I never responded to Marcus's text, and I have not heard from him since. My parents sent a Christmas card last year with a brief note saying they hoped David and I were well, and that maybe we could work toward reconciliation in the new year. But the card also included updates about Marcus's latest job and new girlfriend, maintaining the same dynamic where his life developments were treated as family news while my marriage and business success went unacknowledged. I kept the card for a few weeks, reading it over and over and wondering if I should reach out. But every time I considered calling them, I remembered how they had chosen to handle my wedding day, and I realized nothing had fundamentally changed. They were still unwilling to acknowledge the harm that had been done, or to consider that their golden child might need to take responsibility for his actions. Through therapy, I learned about something called golden child syndrome and how it affects family dynamics. I discovered that my role as the responsible, invisible child was just as damaging as Marcus's role as the protected favorite. We had both been harmed by a system that gave one child unconditional positive regard while requiring the other to earn love through perfect behavior. But understanding the psychology behind my family's dysfunction did not create an obligation to continue participating in it. I learned that forgiveness does not require maintaining relationships that continue to cause harm, and that choosing my own well-being over family loyalty is not selfish, but necessary. My design business has flourished over the past year partly because I no longer spend emotional energy managing family crises that were never mine to solve. David and I have talked about starting our own family soon, and when we do, our children will grow up knowing that love is not conditional on being perfect, and that their individual worth does not depend on comparison to their siblings. Sometimes I still feel sad about the family I wanted but never had. I grieve for the parents who could have celebrated my achievements and the brother who could have been my friend. But I no longer feel guilty for protecting myself from people who were unwilling to treat me with basic respect. The question I asked myself on my wedding day was whether I was brave enough to choose my own happiness over keeping other people comfortable. The answer turned out to be yes, but it took 30 years to find that courage. Sometimes the family you are born into is not the family you are meant to keep. And sometimes walking away is not giving up on love. It is finally learning what real love actually looks like. The question is, are you brave enough to choose yourself when everyone else wants you to disappear? If my story resonated with you, please let me know in the comments about your own experiences with difficult family dynamics. Have you ever had to set boundaries with people you love? What advice would you give to someone facing a similar situation? I read every single comment, and your support means the world to me. Please hit that like button if this story helped you feel less alone. Subscribe for more real-life stories about family relationships and finding the courage to choose yourself, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear this message. Thank you for listening to my story and for reminding me that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to accept treatment that harms you. I wish you all the courage to build the life and relationships you truly deserve.